2. Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It's always fun to get together with our friends from Cleveland, not just because we're usually on the winning end. I try to avoid these guys in baseball season, but twice a year we get together. Terry Pluto was not just a guy at the Cleveland Plain Dealer and a guy that has written about sports in Cleveland for a million years, but also spent some time in Baltimore, Maryland. And I shared a picture of Mike Flanagan on his birthday earlier this week as well. Terry was around for some great Orioles teams as well as a period of some Colts history and has been chronicling all things Cleveland. Terry, you're one of the sage old guys that I love talking to that writes books, and you famously wrote the ABA book that I love so much. But seeing the Lamar Jackson thing, seeing sort of this Fernando mania, as I call it, come to my hometown, it's sort of like when Springsteen wrote Born to Run or something. There's a part of this over the last 10 weeks since I saw you and you saw your friend Pat Moriarty and the guys from Cleveland and Kevin Byrne, and you all know each other. The last 10 weeks, I don't know that you could have predicted that it could have gone this way, Terry, right?
I doubt it. And the cool thing about Lamar Jackson from a distance now from Cleveland is, one, there's this freshness about it. Like you mentioned, like when you first heard Springsteen the first time, or whoever your first, big rock band crush was, the old days, like when I was a kid, the Beatles, like, look at this. I've never seen anything like this before. and even the older people going, I'm not sure if that's going to work, but I've never seen anything like that either. And a lot of people are getting excited by this because, the older football people, well, he's just going to get, smashed together like his hands in a piano or something. And
even Gil Brandt knows Elvis can dance.
Right, but you look at this, and, you guys are around them all the time, so I have a very limited view, but whenever I've heard the interviews and that, it's like, it's team first. It's like he's programmed the right way, which tells me it's natural for him.
Well, and I think that was the part of the draft 18 months ago, if you go back to your Browns having the number 1 pick and which direction they wanted to go in, and whether it's Josh Allen, whether it was Rose, any of those names that were there. Lamar famously sat in his green jacket with his head on his mom's, shoulder.
Yeah.
And the Ravens were the team that bought in. And not just bought in as, hey, we're going to have you be our Tyrod Taylor, and you don't really do what Joe does, and you can throw the ball around, and, it's nice to have you around here. You can run the scout team. You could, not in that way, but in the way of, if we trade into the first round, we get an extra year, we can lighten our cap, we can build around him because he's not going to be Joe, and we're not going to run that offense the same way. I mean, Terry, more than anything, I'm not sure you got the right owner with the football team out there. And, I certainly have that affliction here with the baseball owner that I've watched, destroy really downtown for 25 years. But when you don't identify the right talent and the other departments, the organization does not have the courage, to draft Lamar Jackson and say we're going to zig while everyone else is zagging, because most places, and certainly in every case in Cleveland, dudes there just trying to keep their jobs, man, right? Literally.
That's the advantage of having a stable organization. It really is. And, the Steelers and the Ravens are what the Browns fans wish their organization was all about. You could trust them. And if things don't work out, they seem to be able to recover quickly. It doesn't, like a mistake or two that they may make in a draft or whatever, doesn't sink the franchise for the next 5 years. And they're not firing coaches every 2 years. And so that's part of it. But, I mean, the remarkable thing, Nestor, is not only that the Browns were not interested in Lamar, I didn't hear anybody interested in Lamar.
Well, and the Ravens weren't interested in Lamar when they had when they picked Hayden Hurst, right?
That is like the lottery, the top of the pick. As they would say in the NBA, the lottery draft. I didn't hear Buffalo looking at him. I didn't hear any of those teams really looking at him.
Well, then there was the whole wide receiver thing, and his mom representing him. I mean, it was off-putting to other organizations, and they just felt like you're not that special that we are going to start bringing in Willie Snead to be a blocking wide receiver and surround you with 4 tight ends and put an offensive line around you where all you're going to do is run block, and they're going to be great
at it. Willie Snead in camp, I think he came out of Ball State, didn't he?
Yep.
Guess who had him in camp and cut him? My Browns.
Well,
the reason I remember that is he actually looked pretty good in like those mini camp, early camp things. And I go, oh, this guy from Ball State. And then it's like, I don't think he even made the team. I think he got cut in veterans camp. And the next thing I know, he's playing for the Ravens and playing, it's like, jeez.
Well, and in the case of the Browns and who's making the decisions, Terry, let's just go back to the beginning here because I don't think you and I chatted in Week 4, and the Browns beat the snot out of the Ravens, and the Ravens are, really a different defense now in all sorts of ways, and it's really a tribute to the front office. And I haven't heard Dorsey's name much lately, but let me tell you about DeCosta as Executive of the Year.
Yeah.
After these beatdowns, Josh Bynes, L.J. Fort, Marcus Peters, Damata Pekka, legitimately, G.I. Ward, legitimate guys that have made plays for the team who weren't even in the locker room 10 weeks ago and a part of this. It's incredible.
Well, that's where, again, to go back to stability. DeCosta, I don't know how many years he's been there. So 20 years? How long has he been with the Ravens?
Well, it's 24. He's been here the whole time.
All right, and Harbaugh's in his what year is it for him?
This is 13 for Harbaugh.
13th, okay. So, in other words, they've been together all that time under Ozzie, and he knew the kind of players that Harbaugh can mold into something. That's so important. I mean, when you change GMs or you change coaches all the time, it's very hard to know exactly who to bring in. Again, that's a competitive advantage stability gives you. And the Steelers have it, you guys have it. Frankly, it's what helped the Indians, if you want to switch over to baseball, is they're very stable. And, they can stay competitive when, a lot of the payroll things and that are against them. And, the Orioles have gone through all their mess. So it's funny. It's like the two cities are flipped, on their different franchises. But to me, it's exciting because I look at Lamar Jackson is making people rethink everything. And I really wonder, had Lamar flopped, would Arizona have taken Kyler Murray number 1?
Well, how it's going to change the course and the history and the belief of scouts and the way offenses are going to work. It changes everything about your whole organization. It has to. And I think maybe we go back to Michael Vick or go back to Randall Cunningham or go back to any Steve Young, any running quarterback where you primarily do that. The teams weren't necessarily constructed like a Navy offense, right? It was more like, hey, Mike, we need you to be more like Montana did it, or, we need you to do it more like Brady does it. And I think everybody in the league was looking for the way that Tom Brady or Peyton Manning have done it, but being able to read defenses, it's sort of that special level was something that, Flacco got a lot of heat about, not being able to see cover two, not being able to read changes to the line of scrimmage or make them as freely. And that was certainly a competitive advantage where Peyton Manning was a coach out on the field. This is a whole different level of that where, even post-snap, the quarterback doesn't really know where the ball is going either. That moment where he either gives it or takes it, a lot of the times the offensive coordinators and coaches and owners aren't real comfortable with the quarterback making that decision sort of on the fly. Right?
No, most coaches are control freaks. That's how they get to be coaches. And so it's hard for them. But, were you talking where we opened this whole thing where you mentioned like Springsteen or whatever, I remember I had watched Lamar on TV a couple times before the Browns went in there to play them at the end of last season. But seeing him in person in that game, it's probably like you could listen to Born to Run the first time, on the radio, or back then would have been, I don't know if it was an 8-track or who knows what. But then you go and you hear the concert and see the concert, and you go, oh my goodness, this is something special. And that was what I thought that night in Baltimore, where the Browns play. I think it was like a 4 o'clock game or it was a later one. And the Ravens won right at the end. I think it was 30-24. I walked out of there thinking, this kid's just starting. And I didn't know he was going to be this good right away, but it's like, this is something new, something different, something special. And then, the Browns had, once in a while they have these things, they call them Haley's Comet games. They come out of nowhere, and it's a sensational thing, and just they go away, just like Haley's Comet did. And that's what happened that one Sunday in Baltimore. And then really from that point on, the Browns are 2-2, and, not a lot of great things have happened since. And I don't know. What's the Ravens' record now? I lost track. They lost one more game?
We are 12-2. Yes, we are 12-2.
So you haven't lost it. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's fun, and I'm glad. I have a soft spot for Baltimore. I worked with the Evening Sun in '79. I covered the Orioles, and that's before Baltimore got to be real cool with the Inner Harbor and everything. It's always been a good city, but I have a special spot for it. So, and as you mentioned, Pat Moriarty and Kevin Byrne and Ozzie and those people heck, we have long relationships. So, unlike a lot of people fault the Ravens, for leaving, it's like, my issue was with the owner and that was it, but not with any of the other people. So I'm happy for them.
Well, and in this case, it is very sort of Michael Jackson-y. It's sort of thrillery. And in the sports framework, you've been there for this, right, with LeBron James.
Sure.
And you've seen Special, and when Special comes to town out of Akron, and then goes on that crazy journey of taking his talents to Miami and all of that and back home, and you're still a part of this thing every night. He's dribbling in the middle of the night out there wearing purple and gold sneakers. Speak to that a little bit on the front end of that.
Nestor, and see what you think. See, so often these teams and their marketing departments want to create it. You can't create it. It happens. Because Special is not something that a marketing department could come up with, or theme songs or whatever. Yeah, once it gets going, you could, double down on it. But you can't create what's happened in Baltimore with Lamar. You mentioned Fernando Mania a long time ago.
I should give you a drum roll. You were here in '79, man. You were here at the beginning of Oriole Magic.
Special.
Oriole Magic.
Create it. The wild Bill Hagee with the Orioles cheer or whatever. That was no marketing thing. That was a guy from Dundalk decided to do that cheer. That's all. And people caught on to it.
I forgot you were here for Oriole Magic. Everywhere you go, you make magic happen, Terry Pluto.
Well, I got some, but not exactly with the Browns the last 20 years or whatever. But I'll say in general, I was talking to the Indians broadcaster Tom Hamilton, who was up for the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
And so this is he's going in his 31st year, and he's happy about that. But this is something where I'm going with this. He said, I just thought about this now. Of the 30 years I've done it, we've won the Central Division 10 times and been to the playoffs 11 times. The Indians. And that's pretty amazing, So we've had a good run in Cleveland. And, the Cavs with LeBron obviously are one team without him another, but he won the title. He had 5 trips to the finals, won his first time around, then 4 consecutive after that. So it's
and Ohio State's fair to middling too, right? So, in Ohio State's always gives you Saturday, right?
That's like a machine down there. They just roll every year they have 4 number 1 picks or first round picks, and Ryan Day takes over for Urban Meyer and is like better. It's just been amazing to see that. So it's been a really good sports area.
But that being said, every Browns fan would trade all of that for just like one Bernie Kosar miracle in there.
Exactly. In this town, because it is a football town, and now with all the internet statistics, we get our own analytics, as they say, the wonderful word. I know what people read. What they read is they read Browns, and it's huge. Basically, only when LeBron's taking a team to the finals do the Cavs internet hits match like your average Brown stories. And the Indians, even when they're really good, don't match it. So you're right. Here, Bernie Kosar is treated here like Johnny Unitas in Baltimore, or like a Hall of Famer somewhere, Joe Montana. They never got to the Super Bowl with Bernie. Sam Rutigliano, who never won a playoff game, is still revered in town because, they were competitive. You felt good about those teams. And it's a football town. They just love their football heroes.
Well, I'm coming in this week. I've never been to the Christmas Story House. As you may know, I do have a leg lamp from a Christmas Story House on my set here, as well as a picture art model as well. But so this was supposed to be something, right? So Lamar aside and the miracle that's happened here the last 10 weeks since we parted, what's happened to the Browns, man? You've witnessed and penned and authored a lot of stories. The 2019 Browns were supposed to be something. Yeah. This might be the most heartbreaking of all of it because you actually had some football players and some promise there. We're going to see sort of the shrapnel of all of that on Saturday and Sunday when I get there, right?
Yeah, you won't see that scrappy team that took the Ravens down to the wire. That team, I don't know what happened to that team. That won at the end of last season, and then early in the year, periodically they'd have a game where the talented guys play together, but basically it's been a bunch of misfit toys. And Baker has really regressed, whether it's because Freddie Kitchens is his play calling or the second year, whatever. But I really think a big issue has been Odell Beckham, and it's not that Odell's an evil guy or whatever, but everything becomes about Odell. I remember after they beat Baltimore, and what a tremendous performance it was by the Browns. All of a sudden, it's like, well, Odell only caught 2 passes for 30 yards. And I'm like, who cares? They scored 40 points on the Ravens. They won, I don't care if he just blocked all game. But everything became about Odell, and I really think Baker got hung up trying to force the ball to Odell. And it's a bad look. And, one day Odell's wearing a watch to the game, and another time he's wearing these funny kind of clown shoes and this. And it became a sideshow, and this is really where you have a lot of guys who haven't won a lot, making a lot of money, by the way, too. And I just think they lost it. They lost that feeling of team. And when you go and you get hammered at Arizona, you get beat at. They've lost this year they've lost to Brandon Allen, they've lost to the Duck in Pittsburgh. And they lost to Kyler Murray, who's got promise, but this kid doesn't have a lot going, a lot of blocking or anything, and it's just been really, really disappointing. And there's all kinds of grumbling. I don't know if Kitchens will be back for year 2. I'm not sure he should be.
What happened there, Terry? You've witnessed this from 50,000 feet. He shouldn't have had the job, correct?
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah.
They try to catch the lightning in a bottle. Baker and Freddie made beautiful musical together for 8 games with Baker and Freddie just calling the plays. But I go back and look at it. Greg Williams, for all his egotism, whatever, he had control of that team. They did not have many pre-snap penalties. They didn't have a bunch of guys, mouthing off or whatever. And it was a team that was kind of likable in the last 8 games. They went 5-3. And then, Greg was an interim coach. He's out, and they promote Freddie.
5-3 makes a parade in Cleveland, right?
It does. Yeah, really, when you consider the fact that, the previous 2 years they're 1-31, or, you go back.
Harbaugh goes 5-3 here. They're wondering how he keeps his job.
Yeah. So, and just also, Nestor, you've been around long enough to sometimes you watch a team and you can tell when they're organized and kind of pulling with the old line, everybody's pulling the rope from the same end of the rope. Right now, that rope is out there, and these guys are trying to almost, hang themselves with all the different agendas going on. And it's been, like I said, it's really been disturbing to me. And you see games where they just fall apart in the second half. They've had very few comebacks. Who knows? Maybe there's another Haley's Comet game coming this week. That happens now and then. These guys, they're dangerous in that respect, but I think they're tail spinning now.
Terry Pluto is here. You can find him on the interweb at the Cleveland Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com, as well as at terrypluto.com. The author of 31 different books. I don't expect you to read them all, but you should at least read Loose Balls because it was worth it, and certainly worth the time and the laugh. I made a time machine joke. I made for my wife. It fell flat because we were flying to Tokyo and losing a day of our life and coming back. So I invoke with Marvin Barnes. Is that right?
Yes, Marvin Barnes.
Marvin Barnes. I invoked the name of Marvin Barnes.
Time machine. That's correct.
I told my wife to Google Marvin Barnes is what I told her. So I knew you'd appreciate that. For the Cleveland-Baltimore thing and where this is, what parts do the Browns have in or out of Sunday, right? And we could talk about how they can win on Sunday or whether they can curdle our milk and, hurt.
No, sure. First of all, the backfield, if used correctly, I think is really it could be something. Now, you talk about special that there. Nick Chubb is tremendous. And Kareem Hunt, since he came here, been on his best behavior, and he's willing to block. He'll catch passes. Those two guys together should be a nightmare for most defensive coordinators, but they've not always been used correctly. And I think this should be really almost a run first, short pass first type team. But we got to get the ball to Odell and that. Jarvis Landry is a really good player, and they can, when used correctly. The offensive line's had some problems this year. Defensively, right now, ever since Myles Garrett got suspended, and they've had a couple injuries. Defensively, they're just a mess. They really are. The only way
to that incident is that incident
try to control the tempo, run the ball, hope Baker is hot, and beat them that way.
That incident, it sort of defines the season, right? I mean,
and the bad thing there is you look terrible for Myles. Those of us who've been around the Browns, you probably would name 30 guys on a team before you name Myles Garrett was the guy that hit somebody with a helmet. I mean, he's had no problems. He is the guy that they sent out to the schools to talk to kids. He's the guy that's been in all these different, charity things and that.
We would have said that about Ray Rice around here, by the way, too.
Yeah, I know. You have this, and again, I guess you could say you never know. Or a person just totally lost it, and man, it lives with you for the rest of your life. Myles Garrett, not having him, and they traded for Olivia Vernon, who was supposed to be this other great pass rushing end, and he wasn't playing all that well before he got hurt. I think my goodness, the Cardinals ran for 225 yards against them, rushing. The Cardinals.
This is where this is a huge game for the Ravens. I got friends driving out there. This is about a bye and a week off and not having to play the Steelers and home field through the playoffs. And Terry, I'm flying down to Miami to get my road trips together and getting hotels, and people are inboxing me. I mean, it's crazy. The whole city's purple. But, boy, this is a Cleveland trip where is it possible to stub a toe out there on Saturday? I think it is because
yes, it is.
We lost to this team 10 weeks ago.
Likely no, but possible yes, because I mentioned before that backfield there, Baker can get hot. You saw that early in the year. Now that whole team isn't there. Baltimore was still trending as it turned out. Cleveland was peaking, but nonetheless, the talent that was on display in Baltimore that day, most of it is still here. Now, the sense of urgency with Baltimore will probably carry the day if the Browns show up and are even playing hard.
Well, I figured they give a good punch. If there's got one punch left in them, this would be the week where they can wreck the Ravens' season and screw things up for the Ravens. If the game's 20-13 in the fourth quarter, I will not come down the press box where I'm sure I'll be freezing because I'm always freezing and be shocked because I've seen that too many times in Cleveland. But that was the Flacco. that was the old Ravens. But the new Ravens got their ass kicked by this team 10 weeks ago.
Yeah, right, and that's actually perfect for Harbaugh, I'm sure. He can pull that tape out 15 times and show it to him. Meanwhile, here, I don't know what to tell you. This would be a rallying point because they don't seem to have any now other than let's wreck the Ravens season. But, they've changed so many players and come through. There's sort of a disconnect with most of these guys and what the Pittsburgh game means or the Baltimore game means. They haven't been here that long. I think there's only 11 players that are here from the pre-John Dorsey days, which, by the way, is December of 2017. So it's only 2 years. I think there's only 11 guys left from before that.
Well, it was an Owen whatever team,
right? But I meant in terms of where you try to some sort of continuity on a roster or whatnot, because that's all you ever do is a new guy comes in here. So you don't go through this stuff in Baltimore, and he just rips the whole roster apart. And then he gets fired after 2 years, and the other guy comes in and says, well, they fired that guy. So he rips the roster apart. And it's almost like if you're ever trying to, paint a picture, everybody gets about 4 brush strokes, and then you start over again.
He is Terry Pluto. He writes books and brushstrokes and all sorts of things out of Cleveland.com, as well as The Plain Dealer in the printed version, as well as many, many books. You can find him on Twitter at Terry Pluto, one-time Baltimore writer. And, hey, I look forward to seeing you out there. I'm going to get to the Christmas Story House before it's all over with and Higbee's and all that good stuff. And I always enjoy our conversations. I appreciate you making time, Terry.
It's fun, Nestor. I appreciate it, too. It's always a lot of fun.
You got it. Terry Pluto, a true Cleveland sports historian. Follow his work and make sure you pick up if you're just looking for a great book to laugh and you love basketball, I highly recommend the ABA book, Loose Ball. So, and maybe to put you in a time machine from Louisville to St. Louis, wherever they were flying. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, putting together trips for Festivus for the rest of us in South Florida. Hopefully that will all come to fruition. First up, though, beating the Browns in Cleveland on Sunday. I leave on Saturday. Luke will be on the backfields all week long. You can find him, Luke, at WNST.net. If there's any breaking news like Terrell Suggs to the Chiefs, you get that first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5 doing the Dennis Colazzo Show. You'll hear that on Sunday morning before the game as well. I will be in Cleveland. Hope to bring back some eggnog, gingerbread, and a victory. Just shoot your eye out. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.